Welcome into another edition of Prep Red Zone Weekly. I'm your host, Michael Knight, the director of Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. And this week, we're talking about the 2028 class on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. We recently updated our 2028 prospect rankings to feature the top 100 sophomores in the state of Oklahoma. You can check out those rankings right now on prepredzone.com/Oklahoma. We also have prospect breakdowns coming out by position. We have a ton of content already up on the website as you're watching this. So you can check that out right now on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma. But here on the YouTube channel, we wanted to talk about some of the top players in this class. We wanted to check out some of that video that we've either shot or go into Huddle and check out some of these players' films because the 2028 class is really impressive so far. When you look at the top, there's plenty of guys that already have quite a few Division One offers, a lot of interest from Power Four schools and programs across the country. So there's a lot of talent in this 2028 group. A lot of these guys have been starting since they were freshmen or saw significant playing time as freshmen, and then there's plenty of others that took that next step as sophomores last fall. And became names to know in the 2028 class. So, how we're going to break this down, we're going to start with the top 10. We're going to look at the top 10 overall prospects in our recent rankings. Then we'll also take a look at some of the prospects that are on the rise, some guys in some different position groups that we really like moving forward into the spring, summer, and inevitably the fall later on this year. And then finally, we're gonna just talk about some guys whose film we just love. For one reason or another, they're guys that just jump off the video when you're checking them out on film. So we'll wrap it up there. We might throw in some more names to just keep an eye on moving forward as we go into the spring and summer. But that's what we're doing this week on Prep Red Zone Weekly. Let's dive in to the top 10 prospects in the recent 2028 update. And this update featured a new number one overall prospect, and that's Bixby standout Connor Arant. Uh, interesting sophomore season for him. When you look at the beginning of the year, he was a guy who was used in spot opportunities, mostly on the defensive side of the ball, as an edge defender, defensive end, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it. But then you just saw it throughout the season. He was getting more and more playing time, not only on defense, but he was also seeing plenty of playing time on offense as a tight end. And really, ever since the end of his sophomore season, Connor's recruitment has absolutely exploded. He's getting offers from all over the country, losing track at this point. I mean, he's going to have an opportunity to play just about anywhere he wants. And whether it's on offense or defense, this is a guy who is a special prospect. Last year was his first year at Bixby. He's also a pretty solid baseball player. At least he was, coming into Bixby last year around this time. Might have been known more for what he's able to do on the baseball field, but now he's clearly one of the top prospects in the 2028 class, not only in Oklahoma but in this part of the country. When you consider some of the teams that are coming after him, and so for Bixby, this is another opportunity to have the number one overall prospect in a class. We've seen that quite a bit over the last several years. Obviously, the Presley brothers came through. Luke Has came through. They also have, arguably one of the best, if not the best, 2027 prospect in Caden Penny. Now with Connor, again, on both sides of the ball, just a special prospect in this 2028 class. He's our new number one overall prospect here, and still a lot of room for growth for him moving forward. Really interested to see him in the spring, as well as when the Spartans take the field again in the fall. Our number two overall prospect, Kamieon Compton-Nero from Rejoice Christian. And for him in this latest update, we've had him listed as an athlete for a while now because he plays quarterback, he plays defensive back for Rejoice Christian, helped lead them to back-to-back state championships over the last couple of years. But this update, we moved him to defensive back because it looks like more and more that is where he's projected at the next level. So we moved him over to defensive back. And to be honest with you, it really doesn't matter. Like, he's one of those players where it's like he's going to be a top five overall prospect no matter what position you consider him, whether it's quarterback, athlete, defensive back, whatever it is. He is one of the best football players in the state of Oklahoma. He made that very clear during his sophomore season because that was his first year as a full-time starter on both sides of the ball for Rejoice. And not only did he shine, but he was one of the best players in the state. Like I mentioned, he helped lead them to another state championship. I believe that he's one of the more dynamic athletes in the state of Oklahoma. There's a reason why Power Four schools are already, knocking his door down, trying to get him to commit to them because he's similar to all the guys that are in the top five. They're going to have their pick. Like they're going to be recruited by programs all over the country. Kamieon Compton-Nero, a guy who really impressed me as a sophomore. Like his awareness, his just calm, cool, collected demeanor. That is a bad dude out there on the football field for Rejoice. And the sky is the limit for him moving forward. Number 3 overall is David Thomas, wide receiver from Stillwater. And we'll throw out this disclosure. We wrote about it on Prep Red Zone. This is probably going to be the last time that David Thomas is featured in our 2028 rankings because he is all but certainly going to be headed out of state after his sophomore year in school comes to an end in May. His dad, a coach at Oklahoma State, got a job in the state of Tennessee. So more than likely, all signs point to David Thomas leaving the state of Oklahoma after high school ends in May. But when we did this update, we're like, look, he's still in Oklahoma. He's still an Oklahoma prospect. We're going to rank him accordingly. He's the top wide receiver in the state when it comes to this class. Like he's been that guy since his freshman year. He continues to improve every single time we see him. He's one of the fastest wide receivers in the state. He's completely dynamic. He can take the top off of defense. He just beats guys off the line in an instant because of his first step being so quick. Definitely going to miss him. Definitely going to miss watching him play, whether it's 7-on-7 or in the fall with Stillwater. But the Pioneers are going to be okay. They have plenty of weapons there on the offensive side of the ball. Specifically in this 2028 class, there's going to be a few guys that we talk about here from Stillwater in that 28 class, and they have some more guys coming up. Obviously, they'll have a 4-year starter at wide receiver and Deacon Jones coming back. But David Thomas, probably the last time we'll see him in the Oklahoma rankings. But hey, look, never say never. Maybe he comes back, maybe he stays, but all signs point to him leaving the state of Oklahoma after school is out. So, fantastic 2 years for him with Stillwater, a special athlete. No matter where he ends up, he's going to be one of the best players in that state for the 2028 class. Our number 4 overall prospect, we go back to Bixby. The well is not dry over with the defending state champs. Offensive lineman Gavin Wilson. He absolutely exploded as a sophomore last fall. He was a name that we kind of, started to hear about in the August going into the season as a name that could really blow up. And he certainly did. He started for the Spartans, Caden Penny on one side of the offensive line, Gavin Wilson on the other. And Gavin had a really, really strong sophomore season. He's a player that, is the next in line for that Bixby offensive line group that, over the last 15 years, Bixby has put out guy after guy after guy on the offensive line. They know how to coach them up. They know how to grow them into guys that are going to be able to play at the next level. Gavin is one that has already earned Division I offers. It's not going to slow down. I think that this spring, when college coaches get out to practices, team camps, things like that, it's going to be really big for him. An opportunity to see him go against some of the top guys in the region or top guys in the state. I don't see his recruitment slowing down. In fact, I think that you're basically going to have an open flame and just pour gasoline on it when these coaches see him in person this spring. And then going into his junior season this fall, I think that he's going to blow up in a big way. And that's a big reason why he's number 4 overall. He's the number 1 offensive lineman in the recent update. And it's, again, another Bixby Spartan on the offensive line. We trust it at this point. We trust it. We know that Bixby knows what they're doing when it comes to producing offensive linemen at a very, very high level. Rounding out the top 5, we go to now Mustang. This was just announced earlier this week. Breck Brady spent the last 2 seasons at Bethany High School. He has since announced that he will be transferring over to Mustang High School. So, big addition for the Broncos, and another opportunity to see one of the state's top prospects against the top competition in 6A1. Mustang, obviously, last year they pulled in quite a few guys from different programs, and they're able to start off this offseason by pulling in another few guys should make them better in 2026. Breck Brady is a guy that we have listed as a defensive lineman. He also plays tight end. For us, we think that he projects to more of that defensive lineman coming off the edge. Honestly, it wouldn't be surprising, and I've talked with a couple of people about few people about this. Uh, Seeing him at the next level transition to possibly offensive line, offensive tackle down the line. Whether it's, he starts as a tight end and then eventually moves down to offensive line. We'll wait and see on that. Like, it's still early. He's got 2 years of high school football left, but him joining Mustang is going to be fun to watch just because the competition is going to be ratcheted up. But then you're also going to get an opportunity to see where he fits. Mustang has a ton of talent at the skill positions, and now they're adding a guy like Brady as a tight end, a big body on the offensive line, but then also a guy that's coming off the edge on defense, and just an absolute nightmare for opposing offensive linemen. So Breck Brady checking in at number 5 overall in our recent ranking update. Checking in at number 6, our top overall quarterback prospect, and it remains the same with Washington QB Creed Barrett. This dude has a stranglehold on the top spot for the quarterbacks. He's been starting for Washington since he was a freshman. 26-2 as a starter, helped lead them to a state championship as a freshman. Took them back to the state championship game as a sophomore. They had to settle for the silver ball. But Creed Barrett is a guy that I've liked really since he was in middle school. It started there. You saw him coming up through the middle school ranks, and I'm like, he checks a lot of boxes. He's going to be a dude when he gets to high school. And there's been nothing since he's been in high school that has stopped us from thinking that. Now, moving forward, is he going to continue? Like, is he going to go wire to wire, from his freshman year to all the way to the end of his senior year? Will Creed Barrett be the wire to wire number 1 quarterback in the 2028 class? We got to see a couple things. We got to see steady improvement. We hear all the time, like, quarterbacks at the high school level, they make a pretty significant jump. Like, the guys that are the best of the best, the elite of the elite, they make a significant jump from their sophomore to junior year. We're going to talk about a few quarterbacks in this breakdown. And so that's going to be like the main thing that we'll be watching this fall, starting with Creed Barrett. Does he make that significant jump from his sophomore season to his junior season? Most recently, we saw that with Easton Webb at Sand Springs, where his freshman and sophomore year, he was good. He was a good quarterback, but then he absolutely exploded as a junior. And, his coach, Bobby Klink, talked about how the jump that he made was, you typically see it from sophomore to junior season. For Creed, it's going to be an opportunity to start as be a 3-year starter for Washington this fall. All eyes are going to be on him and the Warriors as they try to make it back to the state championship game. And I know they'll have a sour taste in their mouth after having to settle for the silver ball, losing to Jones in a very competitive game from start to finish in that state title game. Number 7 overall, we go back to the defensive line, Union defensive lineman Terrance Evans. I don't know this off the top of my head, but I got to think that Evans was either the first or one of the first guys in the state's 2028 class to pick up a Power 4 offer. He immediately got the attention, and this was when he was still a freshman. He immediately got the attention of SEC programs, Power 4 programs, and he's a guy in this class. And when you look at the top 10 and really expanded out to the top 20, top 25, Evans is still a guy that is somewhat of a mystery to me just because I haven't been able to get eyes on him in person. All I've been able to do is just see film, talk to coaches, see who's been, recruiting him at a high level. So Evans is a guy that I have circled to definitely check out this spring. We saw Union in person last spring, but we weren't able to see Evans. He wasn't playing in the team camp that we saw Union at least that day. We're hopeful to see him this spring. But he is still a guy that, when he has offers from Power Four programs, and he's one of the first guys in the class to get offers. We had coaches telling us like he's the next big thing, to come out of Union. So, really looking forward to seeing Evans when the spring rolls around and then going into the fall. Obviously, Union, they're looking to bounce back in a major way this season, and Evans and a couple other pieces on that defense are foundational pieces for a potential bounce back season this fall. Going to number 8, and we have running back going back to Washington, Josiah Dickerson, their standout running back. And a lot of what I said about Creed Barrett can be said here with Dickerson, from the middle school standpoint, where we first watched Dickerson just absolutely tear it up at our Prep Red Zone Next camps when he was in middle school. It was very clear and very obvious that he was going to be one of the top running backs in the state once he got into high school. And this season was that breakout moment. He saw a little bit of playing time as a freshman, just because he was behind a 3-year starter at the position. But this year he was splitting time with a senior, and he was so dynamic. I mean, you're watching some of these runs, and the one of my favorite runs is in the first game of the year. They've are their second game technically for Washington. It was the season opener for Sulphur, but you see Dickerson bouncing off of Sulphur defenders, and that's a Sulphur defense that when they hit you hard and you go down. But that wasn't the case for Dickerson, because not only is he incredibly fast, he's incredibly shifty, but he is so strong. Like, you can look at Dickerson, and yes, he's not tall. He is a short running back, but he is not small. And so that is one thing that we try to just absolutely hammer home. Like, this guy is short. He is not small. Try to tackle him in a one-on-one situation, and you see guys just bouncing off of him. Back in the last 15, 20 years in the NFL, Doug Martin from Tampa Bay, known as the muscle hamster, just a short running back, incredibly muscly, just bounced off of defenders like a pinball. That's what Dickerson is. I mean, he's incredibly fast. He's incredibly strong. Look at the numbers that he puts up in the weight room. He's one of the best running backs, one of the best playmakers in the state of Oklahoma. So he's our top one running back in the 2028 class and comes in at number 8 overall. Going over to the defensive side of the ball, our first linebacker checking in at number 9 overall, Ryder Waddell from Poteau. Really like Poteau moving forward. This is something that I've said, really since the start of last season. They have a lot of young talent on that roster, and it starts with Ryder. I mean, this is a guy who definitely checks a lot of boxes from a physical standpoint. We got a chance to watch him in person at our showcase camp last spring. We knew about him coming in, and we were excited to see him in person. And then you watch him run around and do drills for about 5 minutes, and it's like, yep, he's exactly who I thought he was. Waddell is another guy out of southeastern Oklahoma to keep an eye on. And when going back just a couple years, Dax Collins coming out of Poteau. He was the first Division I signee to come out of Poteau in decades, and that's plural. I believe since the 90s. I mean, it had been a while since Poteau had produced a Division I signee. Dax obviously signing with the University of Tulsa. Well, I think they have another one in Waddell. Like, he already has Division I offers. He's going to be considered one of the top defensive prospects in this class, really from now until he graduates in 2028. But similar to some of the other guys on this list, I want to see his continued development. If he continues to put in work in the weight room, continue to get faster. Like, he already checks a lot of the boxes from a production standpoint, from a size standpoint. As he continues to fill out, that guy's going to be a nightmare for opposing offenses for the next 2 years at the high school level. Rounding out the top 10, we go over to Choctaw. Kentrell Gaddis the second. We have him listed as an athlete. He probably spent the majority of his sophomore season at the defensive back position, and it's quite possible that we end up moving him over to DB in a future update. But man, he's another player that we've known about since he was in middle school, coming up into his high school years, as a guy who's just incredibly versatile, can be moved around, running back, wide receiver, DB, and he got more playing time than ever before last year. kind of thrown into the fire a little bit. Like there were definitely some growing pains, but you just watch him run. You watch the way he plays, and he's a very athletic kid with a very bright future. I think that he's definitely a guy who was featured this week as our stock riser. Like the last time we had him ranked, I believe we had him at number 20 overall. He jumps all the way up to number 10 overall. And he's one of the hottest prospects in the 2028 class right now when you consider all the schools that have offered him just in the last several weeks alone. He's another guy that should absolutely explode when the spring months roll around. And for Choctaw, this is another dude who gives you a lot of versatility. You can do a lot of different things with him, and they've been known to use guys like that at a very high level. Even last year with Dejan Green, one of the state's top defensive backs, one of the state's top corners, but he also emerged as one of their top deep threats at the wide receiver position. So I wouldn't be surprised if Choctaw gets incredibly creative with how they use Gaddis moving forward. All right, so that's a look at the top 10. Again, you can check out all of our rankings on prepredzone.com/Oklahoma. Now we're going to just talk about some of the prospects that are on the rise, some of the guys that, we think have a lot of momentum going into the spring and summer, or guys that once spring and summer gets here, they're going to absolutely explode. And let's look at the quarterback position. And we'll start with Nash Henry from Norman North, checking in at number 19 overall in the recent update. He's the second ranked quarterback behind Creed Barrett. And for Nash Henry, he's a guy who, I wanted to see it. Like we knew about Henry as a freshman. He's another guy coming out of middle school that we knew about. But I wanted to see it on the football field. And we wrote about this on Prep Red Zone Oklahoma earlier this week. There's no other way to say it. Norman North is just a quarterback factory at this point. They do such a great job at producing quarterbacks. Nash Henry appears to be the next guy up. He had a really good sophomore season. I'm interested to see how he looks this fall without Mason James at the wide receiver position. Obviously, James was arguably the best wide receiver in the state over the last several years. So you take that off of this offense, and how does Nash Henry look? Looking forward to watching that next season. Now, number 35 overall and the number 3 quarterback is a very intriguing prospect, in my opinion. Tank Taptto from Stillwater. I'm just going to call him Tank moving forward. I probably butchered his last name. But Tank started and kind of split time at quarterback for Stillwater last fall. And a lot of it had to do, he was just banged up. He had nagging injuries. The game I saw him in the regular season, he absolutely dominated for 3.5 quarters, and then he kind of tweaked his ankle towards the end in a regular season win over Choctaw. And so, I'm looking forward to seeing him with a clean bill of health. I'm looking forward to seeing him back at 100% and seeing what he's able to do. We mentioned David Thomas earlier for Stillwater. He's not the only one, that Tank is going to have to throw to. So they're going to miss Thomas, obviously, but he's going to have weapons around him, and it starts in the backfield with his running back. We're going to talk about him in a bit. But Tank is a guy who I'm definitely intrigued to see this fall, just because that all signs point to a big season for him. Like if he stays healthy, and look, at this point of the year, we can't, talk about guys and be like, well, you can probably just mark it down. He's going to get hurt at some point. If you just assume that he's going to be healthy, I think he's going to have a huge season. I think that he is a very dynamic athlete who can push the ball downfield. He has a rocket of an arm, but he's also incredibly slick in the open field running the football. So I think he's going to put up a lot of numbers in the passing game as well as the running game. Moving over to the running back position, let's go to Lincoln Christian. CJ Wright, number 14 overall, and our number 2 running back behind Josiah Dickerson. And for CJ, this is another huge opportunity coming up this fall, because last season he was splitting carries with Braden Baker. Baker is now at Broken Arrow. And so it's an opportunity for CJ to be the marquee running back in this Lincoln Christian offense. And you just look at some of the film that we're showing right now, and he is incredibly dynamic. I mean, another guy we knew about coming into high school, out of middle school, and he is so fast in the open field, so electric. He's a threat as a pass catcher. He's a threat in the return game. He made plenty of plays on the defensive side of the ball. In my opinion, CJ Wright is one of, if not the most electric player in this 2028 class. He's a guy who can go the distance anytime he touches the ball. And now that, there's a lot of carries that are going to be available as Lincoln Christian not only loses Braden Baker, but they also have to replace their quarterback. So they're going to have a quarterback battle. They're going to lean on that running game even more than they have over the last couple of years. And that's going to be an opportunity for CJ to be possibly a 1,500-yard back, possibly even flirt with 2,000 yards. I'm not going to say that that's out of the question. Now, he might not get that opportunity because we've seen over the last couple of years, Lincoln Christian tends to blow teams out, and you know he might not play all four quarters for 10 games during the regular season. In fact, he probably won't. But at the same time, I think that CJ Wright is a player that is going to put up huge numbers in this offense, both as a runner and as a pass catcher coming out of the backfield. Lincoln can also split him out and move him as a wide receiver, and he'll be able to make plays from that position as well. So CJ Wright is definitely a player on the rise to keep an eye on. Another guy who, speaking of movement, Braden Baker moving out of Lincoln Christian, coming to Owasso is Malakhy Harris. We got a chance to see Malakhy in person last season with Hominy, and we knew about him coming out of his freshman season. He had a solid freshman year for Hominy. But his sophomore season last year, he is such a fun player to watch. Kind of similar to CJ with the way Hominy used him. He's a threat as a runner. He's a threat as a pass catcher. I'm very interested to see how Owasso uses him. And obviously, it's a huge step up in competition, right? I mean, you're talking about Hominy that plays Class A Division II ball, so literally the smallest 11-man football class, to now he's going to be playing at Owasso in 6A1. You're going up against the Broken Arrows, the Jinxes, the Bixbys, the Mustangs, the Edmonds, all these big schools. It's going to be a step up. Also, Harris coming off of an injury. He had a season-ending injury last fall, so another thing to keep an eye on as he moves into the spring and summer, as well as the fall. But all signs point to him being a potential breakout player for Owasso because he passes the eye test. I mean, this is a guy who's productive. He's dynamic. He's a fun player to watch. I'm looking forward to seeing how they use him with the Rams. And then finally, at the running back position, we mentioned Stillwater, Jaedan Adams. This player is so fun to watch. Like, if you're looking for a running back that, but he also has a background in wrestling, and that explains the running style. Like, this guy does not go down on the first hit. He's not the biggest running back, kind of similar to Dickerson, where you look at him and you think, yeah, we can take him in a one-on-one situation. No, you can't. And he's proven it time after time. He had a huge sophomore season, and I'm going to be honest, I wrote about him. It felt like every other week, maybe once a month during the season, we were writing about Jaedan Adams and what a big game he had on a Friday night. I still don't think people are talking about him enough. I think he's one of the best running backs in the state, regardless of class. You look at the production. Stillwater brings a lot of talent back on the offensive line. I think that he's going to have another monster season. He checks in at number 33 overall, the number 5 running back in the class right now. But I think the arrow is pointing up for him. I think that this could be a big spring and summer. I think that he's going to produce at a very high level this fall and have, put together back-to-back seasons being one of the best running backs in the state, regardless of class. Moving over to the wide receiver position, just outside of the top 10 is Rodney Washington out of McAlester. I love this kid, and it's specifically from what I've seen from him on the basketball floor. This guy is one of the best athletes in the state of Oklahoma. He can absolutely jump out of the gym. I watched him for about 2 hours at a team camp last spring, and he was just beating guys left and right on go balls. Like, nobody could stay in front of him. He's able to beat defenses deep. McAlester, obviously, it was a bumpy road for them. They had a slow start, but they were able to make it back into the playoffs. Made some noise once they got there. So kind of a weird season for McAlester last year. Also under a first-year head coach now going into year 2. I'm looking for big things from them. They have a lot of talent back, and it starts with Rodney Washington. I think he's going to be one of the most dynamic wide receivers in Class 5A when they take the field this fall. He's a player that, he's a heck of a basketball prospect too. But when I look at his overall athleticism, the way he's able to just jump out of the gym, he can take the top off of a defense. He can beat guys deep in an instant. He beats guys off the line. I really like Rodney Washington as one of the top wide receiver prospects in the state, regardless of class. And it's only a matter of time before, some college coaches start beating down his door trying to get him to play football at the next level. On the offensive line, checking in at number 22 overall, we have Philip Loadholt. In my opinion, I think he's the top interior offensive lineman in this class. He's listed at number 3 on the O-line list, but you have Gavin Wilson and Wyatt Knoll ahead of him. Both of them are offensive tackles. Loadholt specifically on the interior. He's been starting for Booker T. Washington since he was a freshman at center. I think that's exactly what he is. I think he's center, guard, like wherever you need him. He's a guy who's going to be able to beat his men or his opponent. And when we talked about Loadholt last month coming after our showcase, he was one of the top guys, regardless of position, at our showcase event in February. And I talked about like the technical work and just a technician, and just he beats guys time after time after time. Guys come back with different moves, and Loadholt's ready for him. So, anytime you have a player who cracks the starting lineup as a freshman at a program like Booker T. Washington, it gets your attention. And we're definitely paying attention to him moving forward as a guy on the interior of the offensive line that is incredibly special, incredibly dynamic, and he's a guy who will continue to have his stock raised moving forward because he doesn't get beat. He's not the biggest offensive lineman, but he doesn't get beat. He's very sound. He's very strong, very technical, like I mentioned, and he's a great foundational piece for Booker T. Washington moving forward. Flipping over to the defensive line, at checking in at number 21 overall is Cash Mathis from Enid, another player that dominated at our showcase event last month. It was our first chance to see him in person, was at that camp. But the last time we updated these rankings was back in the fall during his sophomore season. And Mathis was a guy whose film we really liked. Like you throw on the film and you see what he's able to do. And he's a player that has a lot of impact to his game. So moving forward, after seeing him in person as well, we really like this guy. Like we think that he is a prospect that is about to blow up in a major way. He checks a lot of boxes from his production. And you mentioned Enid. They were competing against 6A1 competition. Now, moving forward, for at least for the next 2 years, they'll be considered an independent. So their schedule is going to look vastly different than it has over the last couple of years. But Mathis is a guy who gives Enid a very strong corner piece on that defensive side of the ball. I think he's one of the best edge defenders in the state when you look at this 2028 class, and there's a reason why he's just knocking on the door on being a top 20 overall prospect. I think he's going to blow up in the next 6 months or so. Rounding out our prospects on the rise, staying on the defensive side of the ball with Jinx linebacker Cade Klein. Klein checks in at number 17 overall. And we watched him in the first game of his sophomore season against Edmond Santa Fe. And honestly, we were only there for the first half, and we were sold. 2 quarters of football, we're like, we're good. We saw all we need to see. Like he is so special. Running in this Jinx defense, the front seven is going to be nasty. Definitely this upcoming season, when you look at all the players that Jinx has coming back on their front seven, and in our opinion, you can start that conversation with Cade Klein. Like he is a guy who just knows how to get into the backfield, absolutely wrecks shop. He's that prototypical Jinx linebacker that is going to make noise. Even if he's not making the play, he's terrorizing the opposing offense and opening the door for someone else to make the play. Cade Klein, can't say enough good things about him. Incredibly productive last year. I think that he's another name that's not only on the rise, but is about to blow up in a major way when colleges get out to see these guys in the spring and summer. So that's a look at some of the prospects on the rise. Let's wrap things up. with just some players. Let's just look at some film now. Let's just throw on some film and just enjoy some of these dudes that are making plays. And let's go to the running back position. Honestly, I'm going to go all the way down to number 50 overall. Tahlequah Sequoia Ridge Black Bear. This might have been my favorite film that I watched over the last, couple of weeks, looking at the 2028 class in particular. Look at this dude and how he's just dragging defenders. He is dragging guys, 5 yards down the field. One guy cannot bring him down in the open field. You see him just bouncing off of defenders. Ridge Black Bear also plays linebacker for Tahlequah Sequoia. I think he went for over 1,000 yards last year as a sophomore. Now that I'm looking at our rankings, like number 50 might be way too low. Running back, he checks in at number 8 at that position. That might be way too low. I don't know what he is at the next level. If he's a running back, he's a linebacker. I just know that he is one of the toughest kids that we've watched on film over the last couple of months as he just drags dudes and drags bodies across the field. Very fun player to watch over the last couple of weeks. Looking forward to seeing more of him. Because Tahlequah Sequoia had a really, really good season in 2025, and they should have another good one in 2026 when you see Black Bear coming back for his junior season this fall. Staying at the running back position, going up to number 24 overall, Prince Shelburne, a player who ran for over 1,000 yards for UConn last fall. He was splitting in kind of similar. It's a similar story to Dickerson, where Shelburne isn't the biggest running back or isn't the tallest running back, but he's thick. He's a guy who can bounce off of defenders, incredibly shifty in the open field. And then you combine that with the story of CJ Wright at Lincoln Christian. Shelburne split carries last season for UConn with another running back. And so now it's an opportunity for him not only to continue to compete against the top level of competition in 6A1, but now his carries are going to go up in a major way. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's able to do. But he's another guy whose film we threw it on and we are like, this is a very dynamic running back. Not only does he have the production, but you look at the film and he passes the eye test for sure. Staying on offense, although this guy plays a lot of defense too for Metro Christian, Finn Coupland. Again, another last name that I probably butchered. But Finn is a fun player to watch for Metro Christian. Incredibly productive on the offensive side of the ball. Emerged as one of their top targets in the passing game. But then you turn around and watch what he was able to do on defense. And the guy was a nightmare for opposing offenses. I mean, he is a headhunter. Like, he was laying the wood. And we saw it time after time, whether it was in person or on film in other games. Like, he is a two-way player to keep an eye on. We have him ranked number 40 overall, number 4 at the wide receiver position. But honestly, he could be moved over to athlete. He could be moved over to defensive back. He's a guy who can play a lot of different positions at a very high level. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, Rocky Bright III, number 18 overall in our recent update from Union. A guy who was very productive. We mentioned Terrance Evans on that defensive line for Union. Rocky Bright, kind of that edge defender, outside linebacker. Just put him on the edge, let him go after the quarterback, and he was able to be very successful at that during his sophomore season. I think this is another example of a player that is about to blow up in a major way. He just recently picked up his first Division I offer from Grambling State, and you look at the film, and the guy gets into the backfield. The guy is productive. He's an absolute nightmare for opposing offensive tackles. The raw athleticism, speed, strength, size, all of those things. Rocky Bright III going to be a fun player to watch for Union in this defense. At the defensive back position, Marcellus Tyner, number 31 overall from Bishop McGuinness. Bishop McGuinness had a couple of players in this 2028 class that had breakout moments last fall, but for Tyner, whether it was offense, defense, he was all over the field for the Irish. He was such a fun player to watch, whether it was, making plays on the offensive side of the ball or just absolutely laying the wood on defense. He was such a dynamic player for them and a big reason why the Irish were able to make a run to the 5A state championship game. Now let's talk about some versatile athletes, some guys that we have listed at athlete. Starting with number 13 overall, Piedmont standout Noxton Rollo, another player in this 2028 class that was one of the first prospects in the class to pick up a Division I offer. I believe UTSA was his first offer, and Rollo is another player, in that Piedmont offense where they're running the ball, 90% of the time, but he's a guy who, makes them incredibly dynamic on that side of the ball. Every time he touches it, he's a threat to go the distance. He's incredibly fast in the open field. You throw on the film and you just watch him make play after play after play. And whether it's on offense, defense, he's been able to produce on both sides. He's a player that we really like, continuing to knock on the door of being a top 10 overall prospect. He's been firmly in the top 15 basically since we started ranking this class. He's a player that we really like over there in Piedmont. Staying at the athlete position, going over to Cushing, number 26 overall. One of the breakout stars from last season, Lane Simpson from Cushing. Offensively, he emerged as one of their top pass targets in the passing game. And defensively, he was one of the best ball hawks in the state. I think he finished with 7 or 8 interceptions. So he was able to produce at an incredibly high level, both on offense as well as on defense. And so for Simpson, we're excited to see him moving forward. You throw on the film and you just see, again, play after play after play. And it's pretty easy to see why he was able to produce at the level that he did. Looking forward to seeing more of him this offseason, as well as going into his junior season. Cushing made quite a run during the 2025 season, and they have quite a few names back. So they're going to be a team to watch in that class when you start looking at 2026. And then finally, our final player that we'll talk about here, Holt Wilson from Rejoice Christian, a guy who battled injuries early on during his sophomore year, but a guy who's been playing for Rejoice since his freshman year. Holt, also the younger brother of former Rejoice standout Chance Wilson. And for Holt, he's a guy who, now that ZZ is moving on to OU, Holt more than likely will be the top target in the Rejoice passing game. Made plenty of plays on offense. He's also an absolute ball hawk. We mentioned that with Lane Simpson. Holt Wilson has been picking off dudes since he was a freshman. Has a lot of numbers in regards to his defensive production as well. So he's a guy who, if he stays healthy, if he has a clean bill of health this fall, he's primed for a huge season, and another player that, you throw on the film, you see him in person, whatever it is, offense, defense, the guy is going to make plays. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. So Holt Wilson checking in number 32 overall, and I think that he's another example of a player whose arrow is pointed up. All right, so we've talked about a lot of players here. That wraps it up for this edition of Prep Red Zone Weekly. A little bit of a longer episode here, just to talk about, as many guys as we could in this 2028 class. And honestly, we're just scratching the surface. Again, we have our top 100 up right now on prepredzone.com/Oklahoma. Keep it locked in to the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma YouTube channel. We're putting out video every single week. We might put out some more video of some of the players that we didn't mention here on PRZ Weekly in the 2028 class. And again, you can check out the rankings on prepredzone.com/Oklahoma, as well as all of our prospect breakdowns. Coming up in the next few weeks, we'll also update and upgrade our 2027 prospect rankings. So keep an eye out for that. And then be sure to check us out every single Wednesday right here on the Prep Red Zone Oklahoma YouTube channel. Also coming up in a few weeks, April 11th and 12th, we have our next 7-on-7 tournament here in the state of Oklahoma with the Oklahoma Open. We had a great tournament a few weeks ago in Broken Arrow. We'll have another one coming up the second weekend in April. So be on the lookout for that. And until then, check us out once again on the YouTube channel, also on prepredzone.com/Oklahoma. And we'll be right back here next Wednesday with another edition of Prep Red Zone Weekly.